Hi, welcome to episode 52 of the BioBalance Healthcast. I'm Dr. Kathy Maupin.
And I'm Brett Newcomb, and today we are continuing our conversation about the FDA. Kathy and I are writing a book about testosterone for women, in terms of hormone replacement for women. And as we have been writing this book, we've been getting a lot of questions from a lot of people about, is that legal? Is that something that you can really do? What are the ramifications of that? Is this something slightly insidious? And so we did a podcast on the FDA and the regulation and the approval process. Today we're continuing that conversation as we talk about off-label use of medicines, because that's the area where testosterone for women comes into play. The FDA does approve testosterone usage for men with a specific diagnosis, but doctors can choose legally, appropriately, ethically to use that medicine for women. And today we're going to talk about the process whereby that occurs. And we're going to start our conversation about a couple of other relatively famous and commonly known off-label uses of different drugs before we talk about testosterone.
Well, most women in the audience will remember a drug called terbutaline. Now, terbutaline is approved for asthma. That's it. Or it was approved for asthma.
FDA approved, going through the whole regulatory process that we explained before for the treatment of asthma.
Right. And that was the diagnosis it was approved for. However, back in the 70s, when I was finishing up med school, we used it, and it was a new drug then, and we used it off-label, and we used it to stop labor. And it stopped labor very well.
So somebody that wasn't really ready to deliver, but for some reason went into the labor process.
Preterm labor.
And you wanted to stop that process.
To save the baby.
Yes. So that was the drug that you used, even though it was an asthma drug.
Yes,
and
even though it was approved for asthma.
Did you know in med school that it was an asthma drug, or did they just say, this is what you use in this case?
Well, we knew it was an asthma drug, but we also thought it was a preterm labor halting drug. We just, to stop preterm labor. So we had no idea that it wasn't approved for preterm labor. It's one of those things that it was told, we were trained with this. Here, use this. It's better than IV alcohol, and it was.
Right.
IV alcohol is what we used before.
That was the standard before.
Which was horrible for babies, and terbutaline had fewer side effects and was more effective. So we used it all the way through my residency into private practice, and then they came out with another drug that's very similar to terbutaline, which is FDA approved for labor. So everybody stopped, or most people stopped using terbutaline.
Okay.
But terbutaline's a generic, so it's cheap. So it was just as effective as the new drug, but the new drug had all the FDA approval for labor, and it was expensive.
So some smart pharmaceutical company went back through the administrative process to get a slightly modified version.
Right.
Approved for use in labor.
Change a couple side chains,
Yeah.
and you've got a similar drug, and it
When
does
you say
the same
side
thing.
chains, you mean like amino acids?
Yeah, well,
protein,
carbons, hydrogens. You just kind of change a few things on the molecule, and it does the same thing as terbutaline, but it looks different, so we can name it something different.
Okay, and then we can patent that,
Right.
and get a 5 or 7 year window to recoup, and then go back to the generic we were using anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is, interestingly enough, this is one of those things that, we talk about testosterone all the time, and we use testosterone like we use terbutaline. It is an old drug. It's been used since the 1930s. It's a drug that's really similar, exactly similar in the bioidentical case as our own testosterone. So we've been using this
So when you say
for
exactly
all these years.
similar, you're talking about those
Bioidentical
side chains, the
testosterone.
carbons,
Yeah.
all
Exactly
the organic
the
chemistry
same.
components are exactly the same.
Right, and that's what makes it bioidentical.
So there's bioidentical testosterone, and then there's non-bioidentical?
And then there's synthetic testosterone, like methyl testosterone, which has a little extra side chain on one side. And there are different types of testosterone. And those are approved for use in men, not women. They're approved for hypogonadism, which is what they call low testosterone or lack of production of testosterone as we age. So for men, they're approved for
always
that.
get hypo and hyper confused.
Yeah, well,
like for
not
thyroid.
on that one.
Yeah.
Hyper is too much, hypo is too little.
Okay.
So hypogonadism means you're not making enough testosterone.
Okay.
So they've approved that for men. They've approved testosterone use even in the bioidentical form for men, which is interesting because it kind of was grandfathered in. It's been around forever. So it's more of a generic drug. But they've said, testosterone pellets are okay for men. Unfortunately, they've not approved testosterone pellets or any form of testosterone for women. And women have more testosterone prior to andropause or their 40s. They have more testosterone than they do estrogen. And we need it as well.
That's innately, naturally, biologically, they produce testosterone.
More. Yes.
And then when they're in their 40s and they start to go through what you're calling andropause in men.
Yes.
And something new in this book for women.
Yeah, testosterone deprivation syndrome.
Right. And part of the book is to argue the case for having a label for this condition which occurs in women naturally as part of the aging process, but has not yet been defined by the medical establishment as a definite set of syndromes or diagnosis for women.
Right, and that's true.
And because that has not been done,
we don't have a drug for
women,
if you don't have a name of a syndrome or a name of a disease, they can't possibly approve a drug for a particular condition because that condition hasn't been named.
Right.
So they've named it in men, but not women.
Sort of the corollary to Murphy's Law: if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Not
except
exactly,
that it is broken.
except it
yeah,
is
exactly.
broken.
And
Yeah.
so now it's a matter of coming up with the label that people agree upon and understand as a set of symptoms, and then coming up with a treatment for that, which you have done in your practice. And that brings us back to this whole conversation about the regulation of testosterone by the FDA. It is a legal drug, it is a regulated drug, it is approved for use in men, but physicians can choose to use it in treating women if they're willing to do that.
And many of us are across the United States, but it's very quiet. And it's very quiet partially because there's no money to really test it because it's individual physicians. The pharmaceutical companies really aren't all that crazy about doing anything with it because they're not going to make money. They can't patent it.
That testing process through the FDA is generally funded by large pharmaceutical companies or major universities.
Yes.
Because they have the financial backing. Rarely does it start with a handful of doctors getting together and say, let's combine our patient base and accumulate the statistical data and make an application for this.
In general, doctors don't have that kind of financial backing. Neither do pharmacists. Compounding pharmacists are the pharmacists who make bioidentical testosterone. They make it in their pharmacies. There's not enough of them
Let's
to
talk about
fund
that
it.
for a minute, too,
Okay.
because I know we've covered it in a couple of the other podcasts, but I think it's relevant to come back and review the terminology.
Okay.
A compounding pharmacist or a compounding pharmacy is kind of like the old-fashioned idea of the pharmacy with the mortar and pestle and the guys in the back that are putting all these ingredients together.
It's really much more sophisticated than that, but they do.
I would hope that it would be.
They have air filters, and they have. I mean, it looks
high-tech
like
lab.
a high-tech sterile lab.
Yeah.
And they are very careful about exactly what the dosage is, because they have to be just as careful as a drug company making pills on a machine. So they have to be just as accurate. There can't be a variance in the amount of milligrams. It has to have the exact substance. That's the process of regulation.
So it's not like buying an email
testosterone.
drug from China.
Right, that would be bad.
Yeah.
That may not, or Eastern Europe. The reason testosterone has such a bad rap is because it's been used improperly and not necessarily by doctors giving a prescription to people in this country, like athletes, which gives them an uneven advantage. But it most of the time is lifters and people like that getting their
Weightlifters.
Weightlifters, steroids or testosterone type drugs from Eastern Europe, and you're not even sure what's really in them.
Right.
And I don't know how they get it. I interviewed the guys at several gyms, and they get it on the internet. They didn't tell me exactly where.
Right.
But they inject themselves with this stuff, and I have no idea what's really in it.
And neither do they. Right.
And
the
they
side
have
effects.
tons of side effects. It's not pure testosterone. But worse yet, it causes them, it's such a high dose. They use too much. They don't have a doctor managing it. They use such a high dose that they shut down their adrenal glands. And they shut down their testicles so that when they come to me, or they used to come to me for infertility, they didn't make sperm anymore. They were infertile. So that's a real problem, especially in younger men who don't need testosterone, who use it to buff up. It's not true testosterone. It's a testosterone kind of drug. And
so you're not making
that's
yourself
why
more
we
of a
have,
man, you're making yourself more of a eunuch.
Eventually. You're making yourself feel like, like Superman.
Right.
But it makes you feel good to use those drugs. That's why those are controlled pretty carefully, but not the internet. We haven't come to that yet.
Right.
But we don't use those kind of drugs in the United States.
But that's part of why the questions that we've been getting arise, which is people know that there's a market out there for those drugs, that people use them individually without going through medical supervision for gain, mostly in athletics, to get an unfair advantage or to buff up or bulk up or something like that. And so the common wisdom is that stuff is out there and there's something wrong with it.
That's right. Everybody thinks that it's a bad thing. It's illegal. Well, it's certainly not illegal. It's like any other drug. It is actually managed by
let's be clear here. When you're
doctor.
talking about it not being illegal, you're talking about for what you're using it for and where you're getting it. That is all legal
and the type of
regulated.
testosterone. It's pure testosterone and not some kind of byproduct.
So the production systems are standardized, they're monitored, they're regulated, they're legal.
And a doctor's prescribing it.
Is legal. So this isn't the same thing, and that's part of what we're trying to do.
We're also not using it in young men. I mean, this is something, we only use it in people who have lost the ability to produce testosterone. And when we do that in older men, older women, it brings back a lot of our health. We don't need all those other drugs that we've been taking for cholesterol and sometimes high blood pressure, diabetes. Many of those drugs fall by the wayside. And for women, all of the drugs for bone thickness go away because testosterone is a great bone builder.
So the whole osteoporosis issue.
Right, there's like 5 drugs for that now. And that is something that kind of competes with testosterone because really after 2 years, your bone density comes back. And so it's one of those things with testosterone.
Yes, with the treatment of testosterone in women, the bone density for them returns. Now, is there that same 10-year window for starting it after menopause?
No matter when you start it, if you take calcium and vitamin D, you're going to start growing bone.
Okay.
But if you think about it, we start losing bone when our testosterone drops, and then when our estrogen drops, we lose even more. So you're going to start at a much lower level of bone to try to recover from.
Right.
So you can't recover really in 2 years
Right.
that way, but you'll recover at least better bone. You'll make better bone if you take testosterone.
And that's a conversation for another day. To stay on target and on focus for what we're discussing today, we're talking about the legal, regulated, consistent, medically supervised use of testosterone for women, which is a legitimate thing, and especially the use of bioidentical pellets, which are manufactured by a compounding pharmacy.
Yes.
That is also consistent dosage, regulated, and
by
legal.
the FDA. And they come in and inspect them just like they do any other pharmaceutical company. But these are still there's not enough compounding pharmacies to get together and try to fund a study that's going to prove this. And then when they did, anybody could make it, of course. So once it's proven, then, I mean, we've already proven it in many studies, but once it's proven for the FDA, then anyone can make it or formulate it.
Right.
So that they would lose their investment.
Right. So you go back
because
to
there's no patent.
economic mechanics of the system, and the fact that there's not a large body of capital laying out there to come into the production of testosterone, bioidentical testosterone for women.
But I want to make perfectly clear that doctors are here to prescribe for problems and illnesses and even things that go along with aging to replace hormones. We have the knowledge to do it. We have 8 years usually of training, and we have pharmacology behind us. We understand how these work and how a safe way of giving them helps the patient but doesn't hurt them. So it's very important that a drug be given by a physician. So that's what is the limiting factor in making a drug a productive drug or a safe drug versus a drug that can be abused.
Right.
Because almost any drug can be abused.
And you know what? Most physicians are really ethical, really highly trained, really legitimate. There are some that float around the edges for whatever reasons, and those you have to be careful of. But this is an ethical, legal, standardized use of a legitimate drug for a legitimate purpose under the supervision of a licensed physician. So that's what you need to know when you go to consider this treatment and when you go to talk to your own physician about obtaining this treatment. So when the book comes out and you get a chance to look at it, that's what we're going to be emphasizing. This is for consumer education, for you to become knowledgeable about your own body and its treatment, and so that you can talk to your physician about it if your physician is not current on the data.
That's right, and that's right. I just want to add that there's other forms of testosterone that can be written, that they're pure testosterone, but it can be given through the skin, or it can be given sublingually, vaginally. There's lots of different ways to take testosterone. It's not just pellets.
It's different delivery mechanisms, but we're still talking about the same drug and the legitimate use and the consistent methodological production of those drugs.
That's right. So if you'd like to know more about bioidentical hormones, please go to my website, biobalancehealth.com, or you can call my office at 314-993-0963.
Or you can reach us through my blog, which is brettnewcomb.com.